We have a great program here for you today. We have a few of our experts that can talk about what's going on in the market and the world to hopefully shed some light on things. And we have a special guest to help us moderate and keep us all in line. For those that don't know, I'm Ed Barry, and I'm the CEO of Capital Bank. And I'm really excited about where we are in our journey and this big location that we really feel we've kind of entered the community in a big way after years of being part of the community really from the outside, but now really feeling a big connection to here. It's really propelled our growth over the past several years. So we're really excited to be here. So with that, I'll turn it over.
All right, let me, I guess I'll grab this mic. I'm Dave Johnson with WTOP Radio, and one thing I learned in 30 years of journalism, never bury the lead. You gotta hit them hard with the lead out front. Now, American Banker says the top 20 performing banks, number 5 is Capital Bank. Let's hear it for Capital Bank, huh? So definitely not burying the lead. As you just met, Ed Barry, he's the Chief Executive Officer of Capital Bank. Let's bring out the rest of our, you put the pressure on him. You said experts. You said experts. So,
experts.
Again, we bring up the president of Capital Bank, Steve Poynott. Let's have a nice round of applause to Steve. I never tell a president where to sit, so you can sit wherever you want to sit. The Executive Vice President of Capital Bank is Paul Merritt. Let's say hello to Paul. Paul, where are you? And Vice Chairman of the Capital Bank Board and also Bailey Real Estate Holdings, the one and only Jerome Bailey is here today. All right. We're living and seeing it in this neighborhood today. Capital Bank has helped banks and businesses and communities reach new heights. And that is such a wonderful story to tell about Capital Bank. So to tell the whole story, Ed, I just want to start. Give us, if you can, a snapshot of where we are today in banking.
Yeah, as those who have been following along, there's dramatic changes happening across not just the US and the world. 4 banks have failed in the past really 3 months, and there's several other banks out in the United States that are struggling. And so you go back and go, well, what's happening? And it's really the sins of the past are now starting to catch up with us. The Fed had kept money cheap for so long, so people made all these long-term bets thinking that money would be cheap and plentifully available for the times to come. And now, as that starts to correct, you're seeing cracks in the system as people can't handle that adjustment. And while it's happening in isolated pockets, visibly, it's happening in many areas across the world under the surface. But for us, we see it as a great time to be opportunistic.
It's a great time to be opportunistic, and that's the key. And this is part of the Capital Bank story. And Steve, I want you to comment on, we just had the overall state of banking. Let's be specific, the state of Capital Bank right now.
So for Capital Bank, we're really strong. I think the evidence in the ranking that just came out, number 5 in the country for banks, $2 to $10 billion. And as we were going through this, we were all having conversations about the bank and the health that we have and how we're different, how we're built differently. We're focused on our community. We're not focused on some of the things the other banks that have failed, those larger regional banks who failed, were focused on. And so, continuing to stick to our roots, to do what we do well, which is to take care of the customers who are in this room and the ones in our community, that's what's going to keep us strong, and that's where our focus is.
And again, we're in the creative and cultural nexus of our nation's capital. Anybody else think that's pretty cool, where we're sitting today and the role that Capital Bank has played in that? Let's hear it for that, because we're making this city happen and energetic. It's okay to get fired up at a banking event, because this is tangible. I've been in this city forever. I don't want to tell you how long, because you think I should be home taking a nap right now. But the point being, it is real. It is living and breathing and exciting. And it doesn't happen unless there's a Capital Bank that's partners in your vision. And Paul, I want you to comment on why this area, why this 14th Street area that is buzzing, that is hopping. I may never leave. I almost leased a place on the way up here. I mean, this place is happening. Why are you so committed to this area?
Could probably get a pretty good deal right
No,
now.
right. I mentioned your name. That was I got a parking space.
Right. Yeah, so why 14th Street? I mean, for me personally, it's, I was down here at the beginning, 25 years ago, when I remember there was nothing here other than Whole Foods, and then Studio Theater came in, and then things started picking up from there. With Capital Bank, we've been lending into this area ever since I've been at the bank, which has been about 16 years. I feel like we've probably been doing it a little under the radar. Some of our larger competitors are maybe a little bit more visible, but if you peel the onion back a little bit and look at who's actually doing the deals with the small businesses, the restaurant owners, the bar owners, the small developers, the nonprofits, I think you would find that, we're right there at the top. So for us to come here and plant our flag in the heart of the corridor is, it's a great thing for the bank, and it's especially meaningful for me personally.
And again, that ponders in your vision. That's what we're talking about here. Not everybody 25 years, as you said, nothing was here 25, 30 years ago. It takes a big leap of faith on the part of Capital Bank to make that happen.
Agreed. One thing that was here that I'm going to give a shout out, since timing is everything, was Source Theater. And, I don't know where Christy and Crystal are. There they are back there.
There they are.
But we did just have the opportunity to complete a refinance with them. One of our typical stories, a couple of their board members were longtime associates of mine. They needed some financing, called us up. It was a little time sensitive. We rolled up our sleeves, dove in, got it done. And hopefully it was pretty drama free. Very, very pleased to be associated now with one of the hallmarks on the corridor, really.
That's another cool story. We're telling cool stories today, so keep gathering around. And speaking of cool stories, Jerome Bailey is here, Vice Chair of the Board of Capital Bank. That sounds impressive. But it also, and this is why it's such a great story, Bailey Real Estate Holdings. So you're involved with the bank, but you've been a customer of the bank. So tell us the firsthand story. You know Capital Bank views businesses differently.
Yeah. What is sort of special and unique about community banking is, community banking is all about the relationship between its customers and the bank. And you need that relationship to be a healthy, successful relationship in order for both groups and entities to thrive. We depend on the community for deposits, for their insight as to what's going on in a real world fashion. And we in turn take those assets, that information, that data, and then we invest back into the community. So my story is a little unique in that I started as a client of the bank, had a lot of relationships within the city, was able to leverage those relationships in the city and really provide insight into what was going on in almost every facet of the city. So it's that very unique perspective that makes us different than what your large sort of retail banks would do, because we roll up our sleeves and it is our jobs to get to know our clientele. And having the ability to sit down with a client or a customer and say, explain these things to me in detail that may not translate when someone's plugging your information into a desktop underwriting system and making a decision. So, being the chair of the board loan committee, Paul and I fight all the time because there may be some things that don't translate well on paper, but it's Paul's job to come in there and communicate to the board the things that we don't see on that paper. And that could be the difference to whether or not a small bank or small company or small institution is trying to get the needed capital to go ahead to thrive and succeed.
Because people are not a formula.
For sure.
It's not, that's Capital Bank. It's not only in your zip code, but on your corner. And that's how you have to have that close relationship. And off of what Jerome's comments, and first of all, we just mentioned number 5 in performing banks, $2 billion to $10 billion. But I guarantee you, I think, number 1, the only bank in America with a mountain biker is Ed Berry, right? That's got to be. So this is another example that this is an action bank when your chief executive officer is here 2 days after he fell down a mountain biking. So he's on it. He is committed. He can't look all the way over at me because his neck hurts, but he is fighting through. So that's the key. So why is Capital Bank, which is my question, different? It's different because, for goodness sakes, the chief executive officer is mountain biking. Why? What else do you need to know? What else do you need to know? But tell us, Ed, why Capital Bank is different.
I'm not trying to hang my hat on my mountain biking prowess, given I almost perished the other day.
He looks great. He did an accident on a bike and he looks great. Wow.
I think what makes us unique is really a lot of themes that everyone's been talking about. We find success comes from not trying to be all things to everybody. It comes from being very specific on what you want to do, the customers you want to work with, and how we add value. And how we add value is rolling up our sleeves, understanding what's behind the surface of numbers to understand the people and the businesses and what they're trying to do, whether it be not-for-profits or consumers or commercial enterprises, and trying to find a way to get to yes. You know, a lot of the larger banks, they operate on these big nationwide scales, so they make hard and fast decisions of we don't like this, and they throw everything out and they throw it all away. Where we look at it is, hey, we can chart our own course by not having to make those blanket decisions and getting behind the numbers, getting behind the community to really understand what's going on. And that's proven to be a really successful formula for us.
But there's a bit of a thrill to that, isn't there? I mean, you're engaged suddenly personally with who you're lending to, it would seem.
Well, there's always a thrill in the hunt of these things. Like, how do you find solutions? Most companies sell products. And last I checked, my money is as green as everyone else's. So they're really selling commodity products. So how do you differentiate in a world where everyone is selling the exact same thing? And what we try to do is try to put together the pieces in a different way to offer a solution to a problem, as opposed to selling you what we have on our shelf at this very moment.
All right. Steve?
Yeah, and to just go on what Ed was saying there, we're trying to stay away from being a commodity, right? In what we're doing in community banking. And that is everything everybody here has said, where we're focusing on the story, focusing on the client, focusing on what they're trying to do. And the thrill of the hunt is fun, but I also enjoy the fruits of those labors and being able to look at a community and saying, look at the impact we had on this community. Look at the collective work of the people at our organization with our clients in this community and how it's developed over time or changed over time. I can't tell you how many times my kids are frustrated when we drive around. I'm like, oh, I worked on that. Oh, I worked on that. Oh, we did that. We helped that person with that. Because that's exciting to me. That's what we get to do. And that's why I stay in community banking. That's why I work with organizations like Capital Bank, because we are changing communities for the good, and we're helping people do that.
And again, Capital Bank has to always be changing and adapting. Just some of the thoughts in an industry where you need to do that. I talk about industry in a global sense, but you're so much an industry in a neighborhood sense, but you always have to be changing and adaptable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think we have to, we have those competitors out there that we need to strive to make sure that we're delivering some of the products that they have and some of the things that our clients need, because they do need them and they need access. They need to be more efficient. They need access to the tools that technology brings along, and I think we're doing a good job there. So we have that competition, but we can always hang our hat on that we're going to listen to somebody's story. At the end of the day, people may like to do things online. They may like to do things through their phone, but the ability to actually talk to your banker and have a conversation about what you really want to do, instead of putting something into a computer and it tells you no. We can look at somebody and figure out, well, maybe it's not that way, but it's this way, and we can help you get it done.
And again, the phrase was written for me, but we're in the cultural and creative nexus of DC right here. Sound pretty cool, right? I'm going to have to Google it later to figure out what it means, but it's cool. And trust me, it's cool. It means something a lot. And Paul, you touched on this, how much you love this area, but just the Capital Bank, you mentioned planting a flag and showing the commitment for Capital Bank to DC. This is the nation's capital, most powerful city in the world, some folks say. So why is it special to you, that commitment, and also just what makes this place, our nation's capital, so unique?
Well, not only do I work here, Dave, but I live here as well. So it's for what it's worth. I loved it so much that a little over 10 years ago we came down here and moved here as well. In fact, just down the street. So for me, the great thing about the city is really the diversity. I love how everybody comes from different backgrounds. There's a huge presence of people who aren't even from this country. It's just like this big, great, gigantic melting pot with folks who all have different backgrounds and different perspectives. And to me, that's just it's very, very interesting. It's very, very rewarding to be able to work with so many different folks from so many different places to help them achieve their goals. A lot of our clients literally came to this area with nothing but the clothes on their back, and have built up very, very successful businesses over the years. And I and our bank have been fortunate enough to play a part in that, and that's very gratifying. And I don't know that that's that you see that to that level in other cities. I'm not extremely well traveled, but I do feel like that's maybe a little bit unique to the nation's capital.
You talk about working with people. You fight with Jerome, and Jerome fights with you, but you seem to like each other very well.
You do, and I wanted to sort of jump in a little bit on some of what Paul said for a couple specific reasons. People talk about sort of the diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion. Today it's become a thing. They talk about the environment and social, the governance, all those things, the buzzwords today. Paul specifically has been lending to a ton of very diverse communities for a really long time. And he kind of grazed over, sort of some of the immigrant communities that we've lent to. But the challenge there when you're trying to provide capital for people who may not have a track record, who may not have social security numbers for a long period of time, you really have to dig in and figure out how to make it work. And I think the thing that is most powerful about the bank is the bank's entrepreneurial spirit. So as we look around the room and we look at our customers, you will kind of see that reflected in who's in the room today. And Paul, for a lot of people, has been the banker who's given them their first opportunity to start their business. So I don't want Paul's point to be overlooked in that respect, because that's who he's been as a lender his whole career. And in turn, because he is the biggest lender at the bank, we've sort of adopted the things that he's brought to the table and inculcated that into our culture. So I think that's something that we don't necessarily want to gloss over, but you'll see that in the people that we lend to.
How many people in this room have had a dream? Go ahead and raise your hands. At one point, you dreamed of owning something, dreamed of doing something, I'm the only one sleeping, apparently. Well, I've had dreams, but to your point, Jerome, those dreams don't happen unless you have somebody that believes in those dreams. I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah, and it's important. We talk about, being a community bank. So you need a couple people. You need people like Paul to give you an opportunity to say, yes, I'll take on this loan, I'll take on this opportunity, get to know you as a person, and then you bring it to the board. And then you need people like me to say,
Yes.
yes, right? And that's why having a community bank and people from the community is very important, because you have to have empathy. You have to, put yourself in a position where you can look across the room and say, I was that young guy looking to get a loan. I just moved here from the country, or my parents or whomever moved here and they needed someone to give them opportunity, right? And so you have to create balance, and equity on both sides of the table if you're going to have that successful reciprocal relationship that I spoke of earlier. So community banking, has to permeate not only, the people that you engage when you're trying to get deposits and provide loans for, but it has to have that mindset, within those walls of the institution as well, to really, effectuate the things that you're trying to get done.
The mindset, that entrepreneurial spirit you were talking about that exists at Capital Bank, and you just touched on it, the community representation on the board is so important, because you can look across the table and it's a different view. Ed, I want to get some of your thoughts, just as you hear this collection of thoughts from You called it. Your panel of experts, right? These are your experts, your dream team you've assembled here. Just as you take this all in, it's got to be pretty proud to hear what's going on.
Yeah, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished by really taking a long-term entrepreneurial view. And I think that's an important part, building on what Steve was saying. It's not what you do today, it's where you're going to be tomorrow. And how is this going to grow and continue to thrive into the future? And I think one thing we've done a really exceptional job on is making those bets, whether it be in people or in communities or in professions of places we want to participate in, sticking with it and helping make it successful and be a driving force behind it. And I think the power of that too is once you kind of make that level of commitment, you start to attract more people under your banner, whether it be customers or even people that want to work at the bank, saying, I like what you guys are accomplishing. I want to be part of that story. I want to help write my own chapter in that story. And so it's been really proud to see the bank grow from a very small entity to now, not as small, but with still lots of runway to be successful into the future.
Now, do you do the same thing when you drive around? Do you point out and say, we did that building, just like what Steve does, or no?
Every time we walk by a Capital Bank building or location, I make my kids salute. So that kind of works. Now they're in college, so they're less excited about it. But when they're looking for money, they tend to get a little bit more excited.
Yeah, that's right. Amazing. College kids will do anything for money. So that's a takeaway lesson. Anybody else have, let's do a little story time here. Any fun story? Because it is fun. This is fun seeing, you probably thought you'd come in here, we're going to talk about balance sheets and this. No, we're talking about dreams and making them happen. And that's what Capital Bank is about. Anybody else have some fun story about this journey you've been on with Capital Bank?
I could talk about presenting Jerome's loans for approval when he was a client before the relationship went and inverted. But I'll leave that for another time.
All right, that'll be for the sequel to this panel discussion. And it will be available on our exclusive YouTube channel. So we'll have that for you. Let's talk about the future. Ed, you kind of touched on, Steve. Pick up on it. The future, it's so exciting. It's so changing. Neighborhoods are changing. Neighborhoods that now exist in this city that didn't exist before, and Capital Bank has been a part of that, but there's still work to be done. How does it get done? How do you see the future?
So it's interesting. So it's a little bit of a story and I guess a little bit of a vision of how I see it. But I've not been with the bank that long, and I've had the pleasure of sitting in a number of the loan committees for where Paul is presenting, and he does that a lot. And as we're sitting in there, you're seeing the future unfold in front of you, right? And he's doing things that people aren't thinking about today. They're not seeing the results of it today because he's in the communities that are the next phase. He's in the communities with those clients who see the potential somewhere else. And it's neat to see that view. I spent some time with Paul last week. I said, hey, I don't know some of the communities you're talking about. I'd like to, boots on the ground. I'd like to see what's going on. And Paul drove me, all over the place. And I could tell he walks most of the places that he goes, but he drove me all over the place. You'll get that later. And he drove me all over the place to show me the different communities. And I could see the excitement in the story he was telling me about this particular customer who was doing this particular project, or this particular customer who was doing something else, and also pointing out to me how we worked on this and how we worked on that and how we did that. And so it's exciting to see, the next areas that are going to be developed, the next customers that are coming into the bank and how we're growing it. And then when you step back and look at all the things we're doing at the bank and seeing the potential that we have to really fill the void that has happened as community banks have grown and consolidated, and they've left, as Ed just pointed out, they've left a runway for us to really, own our market.
So where others are running, you're running into. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's the old saying, you have to dream it, believe it, and then achieve it, but it doesn't happen without, in many cases, help from a Capital Bank, and just like what he was talking about. So you probably could design, Paul, your own navigation app, because you probably know every street in Washington, D.C. now, because the secret here is you're not going to do this desktop underwriting. You've got to get out there and get with people.
No, that's true. I've been in probably every neighborhood and probably most streets in the city multiple times. And we should probably mention that we're certainly not limited to Logan Circle and 14th and U Street. We are all over the city. And there are some interesting things we have, areas that are up and coming that I'm very excited about, that I think the bank is excited to continue to play a part in those areas coming around.
Jerome, your take on how you see the future, how you would hope to see the future with Capital Bank, because Capital Bank is making the future happen.
So I'm into my 9th year, going into my 10th year being on the board. And when I joined the bank, I think we were $468 million in assets. Today, we're a little bit north of $2 billion.
Wow. Let's hear it for that, huh? $2 billion is a pretty good neighborhood to be north of.
Yeah, I think our in-house lending limit is around $30 million per entity if we choose to go that far. So I think the future is more of, bringing the bank to our customers in a more efficient and in a more efficient manner, right? So whether that's our technology platforms, whether that's our treasury management, we have to think through how can we grow and be a $5 billion bank and do it in a manner where we're not necessarily expanding our brick and mortar footprint. So, we are investing heavily, not only in our intellectual capital, we're investing heavily in our technology, and we're trying to think through how can we create the best customer experience for our clientele and make it easier for them to do business with us. So for me, the future is, take the clientele that's not quite at the 25 million or $30 million entity level and grow with us, to the point where we're able to do $100 million and, be that one-stop shop bank, for all of our clientele, whether that's an operating business or a a real estate company that's doing brick and mortar. We have to, ensure that we grow as our clientele grows, and we make the experience of doing banking with Capital Bank as easy as possible.
And it's truly a partnership with your clientele at the bank. Ed, I'll let you have the last word on the future and how you see Capital Bank.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about the future. I think there's tremendous opportunity. I think there's so much turmoil and disarray that's going on in the world and the local markets. And to me, that's like the Super Bowl, right? That's the time is when everything that we've done over the past 10 years since I've been here, all the bets that we've made start to pay off now. All right, we've done great up until now, but we think the future is going to get even better because we see people kind of pulling back. And this is our moment now to step forward and go on offense more, while everyone, both big and small, are starting to kind of lick their wounds and go, where do we go from here? So that's a lot of discussions we have at the executive level, at the board level, and even down into the frontline associates of what can we do to take our business further by helping people that are getting abandoned or things that are getting retreated from. So we think there's a really bright outlook out there, despite what you might read and see on the Wall Street Journal or see on CNBC.
All right. I told you. Did I tell you a feel-good story? Ed Berry, Jerome Bailey, Paul Merritt, Steve Poynott. Let's have a nice round of applause. You were right. Experts. They're experts. You've got a good coach has a great team. You've got a great team.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, again, Capital Bank, this is, again, hopefully showing you that it's more than about numbers. It's about people. And doesn't it feel good that we live in a world where Capital Bank has its DNA firmly planted right here in the district and in this area, the DMV, really, the DMV. And they do it with humanity, dependability, and equity, which is so important. And also, I want to thank everyone because I don't often say this in front of bankers, but the most important currency is time. I know money too, but time. And we thank you for sharing your time with us today. And hey, Capital Bank wants to be partners and share your vision. Again, thank you for the time.